And again, I hope everyone heard that one. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I wanted to do a really quick thank you to our wonderful presenter, Robert Bullen here, giving up his very valuable time. And obviously with our wonderful collaborator, our DOE specialist, transition specialist, Teresa, on customizing this presentation for you all. We really thought through this and how we could help your role when you return working with students in the fall, and obviously with the students you're working with currently. So thank you so much for Robert and Teresa for working together on getting this presentation going. Teresa's gonna give us a quick overview of what to expect, and we'll then give it to Robert.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay. Good morning, everyone. I'll be sharing my screen with the slide deck for Robert today. If you have questions, please put them in the chat, and periodically throughout the presentation, Robert will pause and ask for questions, and then I can read those questions to him. You are also welcome to raise your hand when he opens for questions. So at that moment, then I can also call on you. So we will do topical questions at each section, and then at the end, we'll have the open Q&A. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Robert, our UH Military Outreach Specialist.
Thank you, Teresa. Good morning, everybody. My name is Robert. The title, UH Military Outreach Specialist. I work for the system, normally for the University of Hawaii Community Colleges. How I came upon this is when I retired from the military after 30 years active duty, I came back to Hawaii with my wife, and she says, you got to do something. I says, but honey, I want to be here with you. She says, you're in the way. I've been operating without you for how many years? You're in the way. Go do something. So I went to school, Leeward Community College, and used my post 9/11 GI Bill, and I got an associate's degree in Hawaiian Studies. And as I was completing my degree, for the semesters I was on campus, I saw there was a lot of veterans going to school there, but there was no guidance, for lack of a better term. So I figured, wow, this is kind of neat, and how can we help this? Leeward is lucky, where they have a Veteran Resource Center. So does Kapi'olani Community College. Honolulu Community College has one as well, Manoa, and just recently, West Oahu. So it's there, but we had to get the word out. And then it fell into my lap. I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't looking for a job. I got my degree. I got out of my wife's hair for a while, and the job fell in my lap. And I said, okay, yeah, I'd like to do this outreach. And basically what I do is any veteran or family member, okay, I don't forget the family members. They're not dependents, because they're not dependent on anyone. They're family members. So what happens is when the military folks get done and they want to go to school, they contact me. And what I do is I'll set up an appointment with them. And how I do that is I will meet them at the campus, and I will do a tour of the campus, whichever campus they select. Of course, I can't go to the neighbor islands, but right here on Oahu, and I walk them through everything, show them who they need to talk to, where they have to turn in their paperwork, and we created a cheat sheet or a checklist, thanks to Leanne Egan at Leeward Community College. And I go over the checklist with all my veterans, and if they're family members, and just show them how to navigate the system, I guess. So that's me in a nutshell. I enjoy what I do. I don't do it for the money, like nobody does. I'm doing it because I feel I can help my veterans and the family members kind of navigate through the college systems. And with that, we'll start with the first slide. Okay, military basics. Like I said before, I did 30 years active duty Army, and I retired about 13 years ago. A lot of those years was as an Army recruiter. And yes, I was stationed here in Hawaii, but we'll get into that in a little later on. But for everybody, the branches of service, it's, Army, the Marines, the Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, okay? And within those branches, okay, this is really first level stuff, types of duty, active duty, or they can go into the reserve or the guard. Active duty, we all know what active is, okay? Reserve and guard, the only difference is where they get paid from. Okay, the reserve is a federal component, which is like the Army Reserve. But the Guard, you have the Hawaii National Guard and the Hawaii Air Guard. And they get funding through state monies as well, okay, for education. We'll get into that a little bit later. When you look at the length of contract, active duty branches, all the branches offer anywhere from 2 to 6 year enlistments. The Reserve and National Guard offer different options for the part-time and reserve. And it looks a little crazy down there, but basically, if you enlist any branch, you have what they call an 8-year MSO. MSO stands for Military Service Obligation, and they want you and your body for 8 years. So if you're active duty and you go in for 4 years, once you complete your active duty for 4 years, your name goes into the individual ready reserve. So your name is on a standby list for 4 more years until you complete the 8 years total. In the Guard and the Reserve, what you can do is part-time versus the inactive Guard as well. So the thing that the kids have to be careful of, and the recruiters will tell them, if they want education benefits, normally the least amount of time they can do is like a 4x4, which means 4 years for their weekend drill and their 2 weeks out of the year, and then 4 years in the inactive ready reserve. Sometimes it's a 6x2. So if you notice the numbers, it's not times, it's by. So you have like a 4x4, 6x2, you know, you can even go 7 and 1. And you also have folks that can just basically go in for like a 2x6, which is, you can do that, but it's kind of silly in a way, because all you're doing is going to basic training, you're learning your job, and then you're only going to do your weekend drill with that unit for about a year. And then you're in the inactive reserve. You really don't get any benefits except the fact that, yay, I was in. So there's that. The scary thing for a lot of people, basic training and boot camp, because they've all heard the horror stories. They're marching 60 miles uphill both ways with 500 pounds on their back. Well, there's some validity to that. You know, people come out of basic training and boot camp, they're friends, and if you can't verify or validate what they're saying, we tend to, I don't know, maybe elaborate on what we actually do. But the basic training, as you can see, the Marines has the longest basic training. They're 13 weeks. The Army, 10, Air Force, 8.5 weeks, but due to COVID, they're looking at dropping it to 7. Coast Guard, you know, 8, and the Navy is 7 weeks. Now, that's just their basic initial entry. So it teaches them the skills of being a soldier or a Marine or an airman or whatever, okay? That is their basic service. Now, when they pick their job, that can add on. How long are their school trainings? It all depends. For instance, if you're going to be a truck driver or a cook, okay, that's anywhere from, I'd say 8 weeks to 10 weeks. But if you're going to go to school to be a Korean linguist or a Mandarin Chinese linguist, you're going to school after your basic training for 64 weeks, okay? Well, is there a difference between learning to be a truck driver in the Army as there is in the Marines? No. And some of the schools, because they have the same jobs, sometimes the Army folks will go to an Air Force base to learn a specific skill, and vice versa. For the language component, all branches go to the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California. And that's where they'll go to learn their languages. Going down monthly pay, yeah, everybody goes in as an E1 or an E2. And that just, E stands for enlisted. So they're making $1,600 a month, which may not sound like much, but they get free room and board, and they get free food, they get free medical, and they also start earning their vacation time, which we call leave, and they get 30 days leave a year. Some of the other things we offer is like the enlistment bonuses. As you can see, the bonuses can range up to $40,000. However, there's some qualifications that go in. It depends on the job that they select and the length of the contract. Like, for instance, and I speak a lot about the Army because that's what I know. I don't want to speak specifically to the other branches, but I know with the Army, for instance, if you were to join to be an armor crewman, a tanker, the bonuses normally start at 4 years. So if you join for 4 years, you'll get a $5,000 bonus. But if you go in for 5 years, then the bonus gets more. and it'll keep going up until like 6 years. Like some of the linguists will get close to $20,000 in an enlistment bonus, but now they have to complete the whole tour of their enlistment as well. Okay, so that's just really quick, down and dirty. You don't have to memorize any of this. It's just to give you an idea of what the kids are offered. Next slide, please. Okay, the education benefits. This is, I have a chart. You see active duty versus reserve versus guard. Yeah. So to make it simple is this little hyperlink I gave you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you. And I want to show you that. So everybody's seeing the overview of military education benefits. As we go, like I say, you can, I have the link there, but this just shows you, because there's so much involved. I mean, you really need a cheat sheet in front of you to let you know. But you see, there's different things. The post 9/11 GI Bill, Montgomery GI Bill for active duty and veterans, select reserves, Fry scholarship, spouse and dependents education. It's just too much stuff to kind of remember. So if we go down here, it talks about what is the tuition assistance. Okay, excuse me, the real quick, what the tuition assistance is while the kids are in active duty, okay, or in the guard currently drilling. This is where it gets kind of convoluted. They can go to school and they can earn, the military will pay up to $250 per credit for them while they're active duty. So they can take college in their off-duty time and they'll pay up to $250 a credit per credit. But there is a cap. They have a cap of about $4,000, you know, $4,500 for a fiscal year for the Navy, you know. So there are some caps involved, but that's just to give you an idea. Can your students take college while they're active duty? Yes, they can. If they come back in the National Guard or in the Army Reserve, they can do that and still have some tuition assistance as long as they're drilling. The post 9/11 GI Bill, everybody provides up to 36 months, okay? The only difference is they have to be approved. In other words, you have to have an honorable discharge to get this stuff. And you have to have completed your first enlistment. All the way over to the right, it's a pretty nice thing. That's what I went to school on. They paid for the tuition and fees. And I got a book stipend of $500 a semester. But where the military folks get all excited is based on the zip code of the school they're going to, we get what we call a living housing stipend, okay? Right now in Hawaii, it fluctuates anywhere between $2,800 to $3,000 a month. So what that means is when I was going to school at Leeward Community College, I was getting, this is a couple of years ago, $3,000 a month just to go to school. Plus they were already paying for my tuition and fees and all of that. And I got the $500 book stipend every semester. So it's kind of a nice thing. So a lot of things going on now with the COVID and stuff. With the post 9/11, they have to sit in class at least one class. They have to have a face-to-face. But with COVID, as long as it's coded, it's gone to COVID and it's now online, they're okay. If they take all their classes online, guess what? $850. That's all they're going to get. Okay. And then it comes on down, Montgomery GI Bill. I don't want to go through all of these because it gets pretty tedious. And unless it speaks to a specific individual that you're thinking about or it has questions, then this is it. One thing I want to show you is this affects the kids that have already gone to college or tried college and aren't exactly thrilled or they just need a break. The loan repayment program. What that is they can pay partial or fully repay all your college loans that you have out. So this is a pretty good program. And it's normally what they do is they go, it's for the kids that have already attended school, colleges, okay? So if you notice the tuition assistance top up, yeah, they can add extra money into it. The survivor and dependent education, there's requirements for that. But as you can see over to the right, they'll get up to $1,200 per month for full-time education. Then work study, tutorial assistance program. But this is really kind of nice. This is just came out hot off the presses as a couple of days ago from military.com. But this is available for you and not a problem. You have the hyperlink there, so you can just go ahead and take care of that. Okay. Let me take a drink here. As we talk about the process for joining the military, enlistment, it's pretty straightforward. Officer, two ways of being an officer. One, you go to school and get a degree and then apply, or you can go to ROTC, or as some of you might have had some really great students, they apply for direct commission into like one of the service academies, West Point, Annapolis. So there's different ways. Becoming an officer after enlistment, they can do that as long as they have at least, we have what they call officer candidate school. And as long as you have at least an associate's degree that you could earn while you're active duty, and you earn it by taking college courses. Once you get an associate's degree, you can apply to become an officer through going through the officers OCS officer candidate school. So that's another option for them as well. Now, ROTC. Okay, let's get rid of some of these myths and misconceptions. With the process and participation, first of all, there is no correlation between if you have students that are in a JROTC program, Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps program, there's no correlation that just because they participated in JROTC that they can go to ROTC to become a commissioned officer. Why is that? Well, because JROTC is a class, okay? When you get into the ROTC at the university level, that's towards becoming a commissioned officer. And to become an officer and or enlisted, there are requirements, okay? Health requirements, Asvab requirements, physical limitations, and all that. So that plays into it. But for ROTC, anybody, once they graduate high school, is eligible to take an ROTC class. They can take 2 years of ROTC, okay? And they call it MS, which is military science. So they can take it their freshman and their sophomore year with no intent of joining the military. They can just take it as a class and just learn about it. If they're really into it and they want to do that, they can always go to ROTC, talk to one of the cadre there about, hey, I really want to be an officer in the military, and they will go through a screening process with them. And then also they're eligible for scholarships as well. ROTC scholarships will help pay or defer the cost of what their education is. But it's an in-depth process. I don't want to get into that. But just to know that there is no requirement for anybody that has to sign up for the military if they just want to take the ROTC classes for their freshman and sophomore year in college. Understanding eligibility for joining the military. There are requirements, and height and weight is a big one. One of the examples I used to use is if you're 5'4" and you're 300 pounds, you're probably not going to make the height and weight requirements to join the military, because you do have to be in some kind of shape. Okay, I tell my wife I'm getting in shape, and she looks at me and she says, yes, round is a shape. And I'm like, okay, I guess I've made it. Great. So then Asvab test score, that's your Asvab scores. They have to take an Asvab. And do they have physical limitations? So my part about this is for my counselors. If you have a student that's interested in the military, that's great, but just keep this in your mind. If the kid took the Asvab test in earnest and they didn't score very well, it changes, okay? But if they haven't scored at least a 31 or higher, there could be some issues with that. So could they take a study guide and learn? Yes, but normally the cut point for some of the branches is at least a minimum of 31, okay? And it's not based on 100, it's just, do they have the ability to learn? Physical limitations, we don't expect you to do pre-qualification on medical, but if you see an individual that's either like one thing, missing a finger, has really bad flat feet and hurts them that they can't participate in running or phys ed or anything like that, that could be a physical limitation. Just be aware of it, okay? You don't tell them, because even the recruiters, we're not doctors, okay? We just make notes of this and then we send them to the next thing, the MEPS role. MEPS stands for the Military Entrance Processing Station, okay? And all the branches send all their applicants there. And that's where they have to meet certain requirements. Like I say, the height and weight. Then they also do a complete physical on the individuals. Okay, so if any of the individuals, your students have like, do you have asthma? Asthma is probably, well, asthma is a disqualifying, okay? Are you allergic to bees? Yeah, Asvab scores per branch increase. I don't see it. I just see the Asvab, all it is just determines whether or not you can learn. That's all it is. It's based on that little score that I said you must score a 31 or higher on is based on 4 scores, 2 math and 2 English. Word knowledge, paragraph comprehension, speed math, and arithmetic reasoning. If a train leaves, one going east, one going west, one at 40 miles an hour, one at 60 miles an hour, how far? You know, you just read a paragraph and answer that, okay? That determines that. Now, what jobs they get to pick depends on the other 8 sections of the test that they take, okay? So don't get too warped about that. But the MEPS, they have one right there. It's on, I want to say it's on Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. It's a long day. And the MEPS roll, they'll go in there, they'll take their physical. If they've passed, great, they'll sit down with their military counselor and they'll select the job that they want, provided they're qualified and a vacancy exists, they get the job they want and they walk out of there before they sign anything, everything is done. You know, they'll know what they're doing, how long they're going in for, and what all the fun stuff is that they're gonna get. Okay, next.
I think that completes our military basics section. And we have a couple questions on that part, if I could ask you, Robert.
Absolutely.
So for bonuses, when is that money paid out?
Yes, the bonuses are paid out. They get, once they graduate their schooling, they get about half. And then for every year on the anniversary of their enlistment, they get another prorated portion of the bonus.
And just to follow up on that, would it be worth asking that question when the students are offered the bonuses, just so that they're clear on it too, because it might be different?
Not necessarily. It just depends on what they're doing. Like I say, bonuses are based on the job you're selecting. So
Okay.
the more people we need in a specific job, that's what we need to entice them into getting it. Not that it's any harder or any worse. It's just that we need a lot of them. So we will give an enticement to bring them in. But now I'll tell you, it's different because with the language skills, they're going to give you a bonus to learn a language. Okay, they're going to give you a bonus for infantry. They give you a bonus for armor and the combat arms side of it. But other folks that you would think like X-ray technician, we need them. Yeah, you ain't getting a bonus. So it's the less, yeah, the ones that everybody wants to do, they don't need to offer a bonus for that.
Okay. I have a question regarding going to school while on active duty. Could you clarify how they're able to do that? Aren't they busy?
Yeah, they are, but go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just so excited.
And do they pick where they're living? So I guess it's an all-encompassing question.
Okay. When you're going, yes, you have a job. Now, we're not talking about shift work because like the Air Force is, I know is, and so is the Navy, they do shift work. You know, you'll work the graveyard, you'll do this. I'm talking from any standpoint. When you don't work 24/7, okay? In the Army, I know you work basically from, we'd have first formation at 6 o'clock in the morning, we'd be done at 5 o'clock at night. And you're working, yes, you get lunch and you get breakfast and you get all that good stuff. But after that time, that is your time. A lot of the schools that, when I was in Kitzingen, Germany, in the federal, Kitzingen, Germany at Harvey Barracks, I was going to school at night because I had nothing else better to do in Germany. So I went to Central Texas College and I took college class. And the classes are about an hour and a half to 2 hours a night, every other night, or however the schedule lines up. But yeah, you take college in your off-duty time. Another one that they don't talk about is the CLEP, College Level Examination Program. Those folks in the military can take it for free. They don't pay anything to take it at the education center. So they can take their CLEP tests as well. Now, some of the issues that some of the students have on the reserve side of the house and the National Guard side of the house as it pertains to Hawaii. They were going to school and then all of a sudden they got activated because, what was it, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, they had the volcano, right? When everything was opening up on the Big Island. So as long as those students, because they got activated, went to their teachers or their professors and said, hey, I'm being activated, here's my orders. Okay, no harm, no foul. In other words, they weren't penalized for not being able to finish the class, but each campus has their own little requirement.
Okay, great. Due to COVID, will the Asvab minimum scores increase?
No, I don't see that. I kind of addressed that a little bit. Yeah, the Asvab is just based on can you learn. It has nothing to do with anything else.
Okay. And can you mention other disqualifiers you might know about, such as tattoos, piercing, or eczema?
Absolutely, all the above. Now it gets, yes, and the reason why I say that is my last position. Now, the military's gotten a little flexible on the tattoo policy, okay? But flexibility does not mean everybody gets to join, because there was a time where if you had a tattoo, it didn't present a military image. So we had some general officers that, yeah, anyway, they made the determination. So it's up to each branch on what they will allow. But if it's sexist, racist, or any other ists after it, they're probably going to say no. But once again, the recruiters have a listing of disqualifying tats and all that stuff. I had a problem. I didn't have a problem. When I was in Fresno, California, as the first sergeant of the Army recruiting, I had the whole San Joaquin. I went from Merced in the north to Bakersfield, and there was a lot of kids with tats. And we had a book of also gang member tats. And you'd have kids wanting to come in, and if you saw stuff, and something as silly as on the kids' hands, they used to do this. They had the 3 little dots that would stand for My Crazy Life. That wasn't gang related, but My Crazy Life, they would disqualify them because technically they thought, well, your crazy life, what are you mentally unstable? And here's a little side note that's taking you into this deep dive. Not all of them. A large amount of the current veteran suicides that have been happening over the last 10 years or 15 years, could it have been from the war? Absolutely. But when they go back and look at when these kids joined and they saw what they had, some of them, like for instance, they were on Ritalin. You can't join the military if you're on Ritalin. But some of these kids were taking drugs to calm them down, and they tended to they got in, okay, and they're the ones that are having the issues right now. So they're very, very strict on the screening policies, shall we say.
That leads us into our next question. If a student tests positive for drugs, can they try to enlist again at a later time when they're drug-free?
It depends on, yes. Okay, yes. However, since they are already administratively disqualified, they will require a waiver, which is an exception to policy, and it's not a given. And I mean to include marijuana. Because they do take a drug test when they get there, and if they pop hot for marijuana or cocaine or anything like that, there is a certain amount of waiting time associated with each one. I think marijuana was you have to wait 6 months before you could actually apply again for a waiver, and cocaine I think was a year. Okay, so but it's not a given. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get in either. That, hey, I've been drug free, yeah, but you know, they're really taking a hard look at that because of, like I say, with the suicides that are going on. When they go back and they check the records of everybody that enlisted, what were possible underlying factors, and oh, he popped twice for a drug test. He was hot. So yeah.
Speaking of waivers, I know there are many different jobs in the military that someone could have where something like eczema might not interfere with their daily function of that particular job. Is that something a waiver might be available for too? medical
Yes,
conditions that you can't control?
it depends on the severity, and I'm not a
Okay,
doctor, even though I
sure,
stayed at
sure.
a Holiday Inn and Express last night. You know, the it really all depends, and it's up to the doctor. I mean, we've had,
Okay,
you know, that's all I'll say. It's up to the doc.
okay, okay. And I think there was one more question on, nope, that's it. Okay, we can
Oh,
move on. If I did miss any questions so far, please, oh wait, here's one from Elaine. Students often say they want to join the military for college tuition benefits. What questions do we ask them to think about in terms of whether the military option is the right fit for them?
Well, what I would say is if they want to join for the benefits for the, say, okay, just suppose you had the money, would you join the military? And if they said no, if I had a scholarship or something, don't get me wrong. I mean, I think the military has a role or a purpose for everybody, but not everybody is qualified for the military. And if it's not a right fit, I'm not going to get into their moral judgment or what they feel they need to do. That's nice, but I don't make that call. How do I determine if it's a good fit for the individual? If you have an individual that shows up that never participated in any kind of sport, is kind of overweight, and all of a sudden they want to, you know, be gung-ho and do all this crazy stuff. Another one to look out for is someone that wants the military benefits, because we do have a lot of cybersecurity and military intelligence jobs. I realize that sounds like an oxymoron, military intelligence, but you know, a lot of kids that are introverted, they need to look at the branch of possible, because they all have cyber folk. But if you're very introverted and you don't do much, probably the Army and the Marines is not a good choice for you. You know, so temper that with what they want to do.
Okay, great. So participants, you can continue to put questions into the chat and we'll bring them up at the end of this next section as we move on. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, I want to talk to you about the recruiters. And there's different types of recruiters. Everybody that just shows up at your school is a recruiter, okay? That don't mean they're good. It doesn't mean they've been doing it a while. It just means they're a recruiter. And detailed, which is you get the letter like I did. You are cordially invited to attend the U.S. Army Recruiting School. And I'm like, no, I don't want to go, but you go. And then you have the volunteers that say, I am so tired of running up and down these hills in Afghanistan. I need an easy job. I want to cruise. I want to be a recruiter. Okay. Those are your volunteers. Those are your first term recruiters. Then you have I say tenured. Those are the folks that actually are good at their job, and they decided, hey, this recruiting stuff isn't that bad. And it's just like real estate: location, location, location. Okay. I went kicking and screaming into recruiting. I didn't want any part of it, but I was fairly good at it. Now, as you can tell by my accent, I know I'm from Pearl City now, but actually I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Okay. My grandparents got off the boat, okay, through the Ellis Island and all that good stuff. So my first duty assignment on recruiting duty was Eastern Montana. Okay. And I had the Fort Peck Indian reservation that I had to recruit on. Yeah, they had the Sioux and Assiniboine tribes. So I have learned to temper my language a little bit, because hey, forget about it. If I'm back home, you know, hey, what are you doing over here? What's this Montana stuff, huh? Right? So I had to learn how to enunciate properly. But that's what I'm talking about with the recruiters. Just because the recruiter shows up doesn't mean they're all that good. I don't mean bad. I mean, they don't know. They may be first-time recruiters, introvert or extrovert. There are different types of recruiters. All the recruiting schools have a quota of producing recruiters. So you may have a really good recruiter, or you might have one that just met all the requirements and went on by, okay? So just letting them know, just thinking about that. They're with the introverted kids. Some of them, and having been a first sergeant dealing with my recruiters, I would say, when do you go to your colleges or your high schools? And some of these kids that I had grew up, like I grew up in Brooklyn. I went to high school in Maine, the state of Maine, okay? Some of these kids grew up in rural America, and then they get thrust into like Detroit, Michigan. Or like myself, I came from Montana, and I came to the Pearl Ridge recruiting station in 1988. And my first high school was, wait for it, I had James Campbell High School. I had Nanakuli High School. I had Waianae High School. And I'm like, I thought that was the coolest thing going out to Waianae. I'm like, man, y'all got lockers outside. And look at that, you got the ocean. Where I'm from, where I went to school in Brooklyn, forget about it, man. You got snow from like October back in the day before this global warming junk. But we had snow and everything. And no lockers outside. So, and yeah, the Atlantic Ocean in Brooklyn, yeah, that wasn't like the Pacific that y'all got. So you got recruiters walking into a place that is foreign to them. And I'm not being funny. They don't know how to relate. And some of the kids, let's face it, when some of the kids start talking pidgin, it's a culture shock. Because, you know, I had a kid, and I shared this with Lindsay and Teresa. I had a guy from Wheeling, West Virginia, and he talked like this all the time. And I had to listen to him do a phone call, and he called a kid out of Waianae High School, and he says, hello, is Chemo there? No? When's he gonna stay? So, and it sounds funny with his language, but when you're calling a kid or talking to the parents, you're like, oh man, who is this guy? He's not from here. Well, yeah, no kidding. We all can't come back to our hometown, okay? So that comes down with, how do you work with them? Well, the word we like to use, you got to establish rapport. Ask them, what was their job before they became a recruiter? You know, there's a kid right now, I'm dating myself. There's a soldier that works at the Pearl Ridge recruiting station. You know, he was a cybersecurity warrior. That dude was into he's only hacking for good, but he's the one that sit there for the military, for the army, and tracking all kinds of folks that are bots, fish, you name it. He's on point doing that stuff. You got other folks that are mechanics. Not everybody that joins the military, and I can say the army, is all infantry and armor and special forces and rangers. You know, not everybody. Okay, where are they from? You know, where are they from? How long have they been in? Some of these kids, you'll find out, have only been in the military 5 years, and it's their first assignment as a recruiter. And there they are here on the beautiful islands of Hawaii, and they're not even from the islands. They could be from like Rhode Island or Long Island, but they're not from the Hawaiian Islands. So, you know, you got to look at that. And what I mean by establishing rapport, they may be scared to death to walk onto your campus. Believe it or not, they may be scared to death. So ask them, what can I do as a counselor to assist you? But find out what they can do to assist you, because they're more than willing to help you folks out. It has been brought to my attention, well, some recruiters are here all the time. Other recruiters hardly ever show up and don't even make an effort. Yeah, there's a reason. It depends on what is their quota. And let's just face it, the Army's quota every single year, and this might blow your mind, not from Hawaii, but as a nation, we have to recruit every year 100,000 people. And that's just for the regular Army. That's not even talking about Army Reserve. Army Reserve is about 90,000 a year. And then you got to look at the Navy. You know, how big is the branches? Okay, the one to have the smallest mission, of course, would be like the Coast Guard and the Air Force. So the Air Force, I am so envious of them. They have a mission for 1 month. There's one recruiter, he goes, I have to write one contract. And it's like, really? When I was running the Pearl Ridge station, I had three regular Army recruiters, and we had a mission of anywhere between 10 and 12 a month. So there is quotas in there. So do they come and help? Yeah, if they have to. That's why you always got the Marines and the Army in there saying, hey, what can we do? Can we do a presentation? Can we do this? Can we do that? Yeah, they're hustling. They got to contact a lot of kids. So next slide. Knowing the student's interest. Go ahead. You're muted.
Thank you. I have a question about recruiters before we move
Sure.
on. A parent called yesterday to ask if a recruiter would ever call a student to ask for their social security number and other personal information. My student received a call for this information to pull their Asvab score results.
No, they do not need a social security number. And to pull it, well, no, wait, I stand corrected. I stand corrected. If this kid is talking to a recruiter and the applicant says, or the student says, yeah, I took the ASVAB test for another branch, okay? Yes, then you have to do what they call a switch, and you do need the social security number and all that, because in other words, if you take the high school test, that's fine and dandy, and he's talking to the Army, and you fill out a form, and it doesn't convert anything, but it kind of, the owner becomes the Army becomes the owner of Teresa's Teresa's ASVAB score. Now, if Teresa doesn't like the Army and Teresa wants to go into the Air Force, and Teresa talks to the Air Force recruiter for the scores that are in the Army's lingo to be converted into the Air Force lingo, yes, they have to do that by social security number. Otherwise, you just have all the branches grabbing everybody's scores and nobody knows which score to use.
Robert, is it possible for the student to transfer those records rather than give their social security number if they don't feel comfortable? The parent might not want that. Can the student call and say, can you transfer my records or something?
Yes, but they have to, it's not a verbal, they have to sign a form. I don't know with this
Okay.
COVID junk going on, but yes, they have to fill out an actual form. It's called the, I want to say D form 714, but it could be MEPCOM form 714. There's a form that they fill out with the social security number and all that junk, yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
No other questions about recruiters, so we can go on to section 3. Thanks.
Wow, good. Knowing the student's interest. Why do I have the word teams up there? Okay, I do this from the Army's perspective, okay? Each branch has their own way they talk about it. When I sit down, and I'll give you an idea how I used to talk. If I was going to talk to Teresa about joining the military, joining the Army, I would talk to her about teams. And it's an acronym, and it stands for, I would talk to her about training, education, adventure, money, and service to country. And the questions are, it's not about getting you to join. It's honestly, what is it in your best interest? What do you want? Because there have been times in my past where I'm like, dude or dudette, you don't need the military. I understand, but yeah, this is not based on your answers and stuff. So what you talk about teams, like say, how important is training to you? And it's always open-ended, fact-finding questions, not a question you can answer with yes or no. So I say, so what do you want to do with your life? Oh, I want to be a counselor. Really? What kind of a counselor? Or the big one I had when I was in Montana, I want to be an engineer. Really? Okay. What kind of an engineer? Well, what do you mean? Well, there's all kinds, electrical, chemical, nuclear, stop me when I hit the one you think you're going to take. And of course they'll say, I just want to be a regular engineer, which tells me as a recruiter, you haven't thought about it enough. Now you're just trying to stonewall, but that's okay. I got this. Okay. How would you go and get this engineer training? And what we find out is normally it falls into 2 categories. One, they want a specific job that they're going to need training for, or they want to go to school and they got no money. So that's fine. And you just ask them about all these education. How important is education to you? Oh, it's very important. Really? How so? Well, I want to be an engineer. Really? What kind of an engineer? Why do you want to be this type of engineer? Is there another reason why? Oh, okay. Do you know where you want to go to get this engineering degree? How are you going to pay for this engineering degree? How long is it going to take you to get this engineering degree? It's like, okay. And that's what you talk to them about. So based on their answers, that's where it comes up with the full-time enlistment and part-time college. Basically, active duty and taking college in your off-duty time. Now, this is what I tell the parents, that yes, they can take college in their part-time when they're off-duty time, but it's up to the individual whether they do it or not, okay? I can't guarantee that you will go to school. That's up to you. You don't want to go to school and you're off duty. That's on you. I can't control that. But there is the opportunity to do that. And then when they finish, they can, and if they didn't take any college, then they get out. Yeah, you got your post 9/11 GI Bill. Or you got your part-time enlistment, which is the Army Reserve. Okay, and then they get out of, or the National Guard, and they come back home after their training, and boom, 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 they go to school. They go to full-time college for a future commission, you know, like the ROTC portion of it, or they go back in as an enlistment option after they have some college, get the loan repayment program, or go in to be an officer, whatever they want to do. So it really depends on what does the student want to do and how can we help them. And a spiel, so to say, our sales, we don't like calling it sales anymore. They're getting all touchy about that because we're not selling anything. But one of the things is, well, we do what we call FEBA, facts, evidence, benefit, and agreement. And this is how it would sound for somebody like Teresa that want to be an engineer. Well, Teresa, the fact is the Army has the Select Reserve GI Bill, which enable you to go to school, so you can attend Manoa, so you can get your degree in engineering because you want to build things and because it's really exciting for you. Now, don't you agree that's what you want? So my question to you is, if that's what you want, when's a good day for you to enlist? Friday, or would Wednesday be better? So basically, you know, and I joke, and when I used to teach recruiting, because I was in charge of the recruiting school, I would do it as, and just as an example, I find somebody in a classroom, a guy, and I'd say, okay, everybody look at him. Kind of ugly, ain't he? Yeah, he is, good, but he's married. You did one heck of a sales job to get your wife, okay? The fact is, blah, 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 you know, and just go through that. And it's all about the fact is, and here's the evidence. And the benefit to you by joining is you're going to get all of these things. Now, don't you agree that's what you want? So I saw a question pop up.
Yes. If a student wants the part-time option, what do they need to consider in terms of pursuing reserves versus the Guard?
Okay. The only consideration, honestly, for part-time is the jobs that are available. And what I mean by that is, if you go full-time, you have 100 and something different jobs to choose from. What you're, excuse me, what you have to consider is with the Army Reserve and the Army Guard. If you want to go part-time, like, and you're interested in the medical field, then you would go into the Army Reserve, because the Army Guard didn't have a large medical field. They might have a medic or two, but we have Tripler Army Hospital, which is a large Army Reserve unit. So that's the only thing, the different jobs. The Guard is normally your, the combat units and combat support, and the Reserve is your combat service support, which means totally nothing to you. Yeah, it's the same amount of monies for the most part. The only thing is for the education is with the Guard, the states, and I say states, have extra monies that they can allocate for educational benefits.
So there's two things I've actually heard that maybe you can let me know if they're myths, is that when it comes to the reserves, actually federal dollars for education don't run out, but at the state level they can, because it depends on the state's budget.
That would be correct.
Okay. And then also in the state of Hawaii, I've also heard that the Guard deploys more than the Reserve, because the Reserve tends to stay back and fill the pukas in the active duty slots when the active is deployed.
Yes and no. And yes, the Reserve fills the pukas when the active folks go, but they're asked who wants to go. So that's one thing. The thing with the Guard is the Guard depends on the missions that they have to take care of. You know, the Guard, because, and I just, years ago, when all this stuff was kicking up around early 2000, okay, when we started doing the Afghan campaign and Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation whatever this was, okay, the problem that they were having was the Guard and the Reserves, they were never at full strength. So they couldn't deploy. So they started pumping all kinds of people there. And that's like, now you want to be military, you're going to play military. You're deploying. And everybody went, you can't do that. I'm in the Guard or I'm in the reserve. No, you're going to deploy. You're in the military. You're getting paid. So that's where a lot of that. And it depends on the missioning that they have. I mean, the Army Reserve goes to, and this is not breaking some kind of secrecy or military intelligence, okay? But the folks here, the reserves, they go to Yamasakura in Japan, which is a yearly training event. They go to Operation Cobra Gold, which they go and they train in Thailand. So they move out as well. It's just not as advertised, I guess, as the Guard.
Okay. Sometimes in the mainland, we have another couple questions. Sometimes colleges in the mainland will offer ROTC programs for Guard or reserves that appeal to our students. After they graduate from the college, do they have to do their Guard and reserve duty in that state where the college is? And then there's a follow-up question from someone else related that says, can you transfer states once you enlist in the Guard?
Yes, you can. The only difference is, and here's where this is getting down in the weeds. You can transfer anywhere in the Guard and or the reserve to any state, provided the place you're going to has your job. So for instance, if you're a water purification specialist here in Hawaii and you want to go to New York City and they don't have a water purification job for you there, they can overslot you, which means they put you in a position, but then they can kind of make you learn another job. But you'll know this before you transfer, because if you're thinking of transferring, and you'll see that here with a lot of folks in the Hawaii Guard, I mean the Hawaii, not the Hawaii, the Army Reserve, that their spouses are active duty and get sent here to Schofield. They're in the reserve, so they have to come here and find a job in the Army Reserve. And if they can't find it in the reserve, they kind of got to jump into the Guard. Can they go from Guard to reserve? Yes, you can. Can you go from reserve to the Guard? Yes, you can.
And just going back to that question, if you accept, if you do an ROTC program in the mainland, you have to serve your Guard duty there in that state.
I can't speak to that. I really don't know. I really don't know. I don't, because you can, if you can transfer, you can transfer. It's not like you're paying back. When you train here at University of Hawaii, which has the ROTC, it doesn't mean you have to stay here. Sometimes if you graduate, let's say a class of 60, they ain't got 60 spots for you. So you might have the opportunity to go active duty or, okay, Guard or the reserve. They try to find you a unit, but if there's no unit, you say, hey, you know what? I went to school here, but I'm going to go back home. They'll look and see if they have openings for an officer in that unit where you think you're going to go back home to.
Okay. So probably the most important thing is to identify your job and then where those opportunities are if you want to move around.
Yes. However, that's where I get the differentiation with the folks is like open to all first year. Correct, Cindy. Yep. What I'm saying is, if you're in the Guard or the reserve, the job you do, you know, you're only going to do that 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks out of the year. Does that make sense? So it's really not a.
Okay.
Now, some folks do get lucky, like carpentry masonry specialists that they have at the Army Reserve. They can be carpenters working for Building 5 or whatever that is. So yeah, that works.
Okay. So for those of you who can't read the chat, Cindy posted a question regarding clarification for Manoa, open to all first 2 years, and then it becomes selective if you want to continue, and Robert confirmed that that's correct.
Yes.
There's another question. I was told once that it's somewhat difficult to become an officer if you enlist after high school, and that if you want to be an officer, getting your degree first is the better option.
Yes, and maybe. Is it more difficult? Yes, because as I said earlier, you have to have at least an associate's degree. You have to have at least an associate's degree to apply to become an officer. So, and that's by going to officer candidate school. A lot of folks that go and get their degree as a 4-year, they have a bachelor's degree, and then they apply to apply as an officer to go to officer candidate school because they have a bachelor's degree. Are they more competitive than, say, someone with just an associate's trying to go to OCS? Yes, they are. I can't speak for the other branches, but I know in the Army, we tend to take care of ourselves first. So if you have a individual and she goes to school in her off-duty time and she gets her associate's degree and then she wants to go to OCS, officer candidate school, that's not a problem. The issue becomes when they want to get promoted past captain, then they have to have at least a bachelor's degree. So you get your foot in the door, you can become a second lieutenant and a first lieutenant and a captain. But if you want to progress up to like major, now you need to have at least a bachelor's degree.
I have a follow-up question for that. So if they choose to enlist and think that they'll, attend college part-time and go for officer candidate school, what kind of support is available for them, let's say after basic training and they get stationed far away in Florida and so they're not near family or their old high school counselor they could call up? What kind of support might they be able to look for?
On every military, I can't say every military base has an education center. So you go there and they have counselors on the education centers and that are not connected to any college. But like, for instance, as you see in my background, I'm here on Hickam. I'm on Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam at the Air Force Education Center. I work for the University of Hawaii counselors, but they have their own counselors where if an airman wants to complete their community college of the Air Force degree, their CCAAF, they can choose UH, they can choose Wayland Baptist, they can choose HPU, they have Embry-Riddle here. So there's people that will help them define a degree plan for them, and then it's up to the individual to figure out which school is the best fit for them.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Robert. There's no more questions, and I think that is the last part of, oh, we didn't get to the tips and we're out of time. It's 9:58, but you kind of gave us tips along the way.
I did,
and
yes.
Yes. So I think probably what we should do is if you guys have continued questions, we do have that form that Lindsay created where we can always put questions to answer later. And Robert, you are available to help the counselors throughout the rest of the next 4 weeks, right?
Absolutely. Anything I can do to help you out. I've done it with a few counselors where we've set up Zoom with myself, your student, and I want the counselors to be involved along with the recruiter for the branch. So we have like a 4-way Zoom, and it's not, I just want to make sure that the recruiters know where we're going with this and that if there's any kind of doubt that I can see on their face, because sometimes the recruiters get caught up in their own mind, like blah, 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 blah. Break it down. Use civilian words, not military jargon.
Okay, great. And are you available to talk with students who don't know which branch yet? Like you couldn't identify a recruiter yet?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, that's what I'll do with them and say, what are you looking at? What do you want to do? Like, for instance, I talked with a student from YNI, wasn't sure. I wanted to be a Billy Batty. And I'm like, okay, for the Army, you have the Rangers and the Special Forces. You got Marine Recon. The Navy, you have underwater demolition. You have the SEALs. The Air Force, you have the PJs, the pararescue jumpers and stuff. Pick your stuff, whatever you want.
Okay, great. Well, Robert, before you leave the meeting, please read through the Zoom chats. There's a lot of thank yous from everyone. We've learned so much with you today. So we just thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes, we'll pass it off to Lindsay to close us out. Any announcements or anything we need to know?
No, this was wonderful. Thank you so much again to Robert for providing your expert knowledge and just your experiences. And I want to reiterate, Robert is so willing to help you. So please include him in emails you might have with students, CC him, or even include him on your Zoom sessions. He really, really is student focused, as you can tell. And I think he knows way more than many of us when we talk about military and college options. So please reach out to him. And also I do want to say, Robert, you offered this to me and Teresa, but at any moment, even when they return back to school, I think you're more than welcome to connect with him as well. to give you some pointers. Robert, did you want to share more about that, of offering your
Yeah,
services?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm available for like birthdays, bar mitzvahs,
Oh.
weddings. You know, no, I mean, yeah, if whenever you come back to school, if you have like a teacher down day or professional development, I don't have a problem. Just let me know. I saw somebody in the chat said, I wish you could come to the neighbor islands. Yeah, so do I. But, you know, I work for the system, and the system is very persistent on what they want. But we do have military recruiters out there. But if you want, just let me know. And I have an ID card, and when I tell them what my former rank was, it opens an awful lot of doors, and everybody gets all excited, like, okay. And I'm like, yeah, let's just get over ourselves and let's do the right thing. But yeah, I'd love the opportunity to go to neighbor islands again. Knock on wood, everything will be lifted and we can do that.
Yes,
Looks like people are interested in having you do Asvab interpretation.
I can do that, but did you know that they're education officers for all the branches, and they're free, and they'll do the Asvab interpretation. You know, the Navy used to be really big on that. I forgot what her name was, because that was like many moons ago. But she's there. There's Benjamin Soy with the Army that I know of, and he is education specialist. And they do Asvab interpretation. But if I have to do it, I can do it. And I just tell them, and it's not about what branch. It's open your mind. There's so much that they don't know, and they don't know what they don't know. So.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Robert. You guys have all his email contact information, and we'll definitely keep you posted as things change. I'm not sure if the phone number that you provided, Robert, will be changing after we're trying to navigate the UH and how fall is looking like, but please, email will not change, so please contact him.
Yeah, my email, that's the best way to get me is email.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Please take care and enjoy the wonderful weekend.
Absolutely.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Aloha.
Aloha.